Welcome to another Rain Race podcast special. Today we have IMSA sports car driver Ricky Taylor joining us. He's going to be talking about his racing career and answering some of your questions. If you're new to this podcast, you can click the card at the top right-hand corner on YouTube to check out the rest of our episodes. Other than that, we hope you enjoy this episode and catch you in the next one. Welcome to a Rain Race special edition episode, joined here alongside Kyle Cuthbertson.
Sup?
Kevin Rollins.
Sup?
And the person who's actually making this episode interesting, IMSA sports car driver Ricky Taylor.
Hey guys.
He is currently racing for Acura Team Penske in the prototype division in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. And fortunately, thanks to Kyle, was lucky enough to join us on this episode. We're going to be going over his racing career and just going over some interesting stories relating to his career, and then at the end we'll be getting to some questions that some of you guys may have asked through social media. Anyway, so starting with the beginning of your career, actually way before that, I just want to get this out, is one thing that a lot of people might not know, and I'll be honest, I didn't know this until 4 minutes ago, is that you were born in England.
Yeah. So, I don't know, sometimes it's a good thing to promote and sometimes it's a bad thing. I'm very much an American, but my dad was racing with the Spice GTP at the time, and so we were living in England. But for an American manufacturer's sake, I'm an American.
And yeah, your brother Jordan, of course, was born in Florida a couple of years after you. So
I keep cracking up because I'm remembering something that was on speed commentary one time when Jordan was racing with Corvette. And it's something like one was born in Spain, one's a Dane, and one belongs to Wayne.
That's pretty good. I never heard that one before, but I like that.
When Speed Channel was a thing.
The speed guys were the best. I mean, they're kind of the same guys, but they had we were really lucky when we had Lee Diffie and all those guys. So who knows? Next year when we go back to NBC, or we might get a bit of a new shake-up team. So
please bring Lee Diffie back.
Yeah, I love Lee. A big thing that a lot of people don't know is that they've stopped having the guys travel to the races. So they do the whole team is broadcasting from another state. So they don't get all the stories from at the track anymore. And back when it was speed, the guys were walking the paddock and interviewing everybody and getting all the scoop and the stories. And I think the broadcast suffers now from not having that aspect of it. And back then, Lee and Calvin and Brian Till and all those guys used to walk the paddock, and I think it really added to the show.
For sure.
Even big races like Le Mans, they don't send. Well, I guess with Velocity this year, they had guys at the track, but in the later years of Fox, they didn't.
Yeah, and you can tell when you watch it, it kind of lacks that extra bit of information that you're not getting, because they're basically watching it just like we are.
Also, before I forget, before we start into all the career stuff, Chris just reminded me, you just got back from Le Mans, so let's talk about Le Mans for a second.
Yeah, it was a disappointing result. It's such a big build-up. It was a 2-day test at Spa, and then the whole week, there was the test day at Le Mans after Detroit, and then it was a whole week in Le Mans leading up to it, only to get halfway through and have the engine blow up. So, that's the story of endurance racing, but really big letdown. I think the pace early was really good. We went from, qualifying terribly, 16th, almost in the back, and then racing our way all the way up to a solid 4th, 5th, 6th area. And with the disqualifications after the race, it looks like we would have been racing for a podium. So it's unfortunate, but when you're not really having a shot to win, it doesn't really matter where you finish. So it was fun to get to drive.
It looked like the Ligiers were actually competitive.
Yeah, it looked. I think the package with the Michelin was definitely the Ligier Michelin combination seemed to be a bit preferred. We suffered when it got cold. It seemed like our tires worked a bit better in the heat. But yeah, I think it was really nice to see some parity in the 24-hour again between the Orcas and Ligier. It seemed like the Lara suffered again, but definitely nice to have a bit of a combination there.
I just want to quickly throw this in here since we're on the topic of Le Mans. Have you been possibly eyeing LMP1 for the future, or are you just going to take it one step at a time and pick your rides where you can find them?
Yeah, I mean, just getting to race there is fantastic. And to be honest, I think when you're racing in LMP1, if you're not, or if you were there this year, I had no interest in being with, Dragon Speed or those cars that couldn't really win. You're just driving around trying to win the privateer group. But in LMP2, the quality is so high. I mean, I really enjoy it. I think if we could go back with the right package, it was really great getting to drive with DHH and Combe. I mean, I thought we were a great lineup if we could have had a little bit more pace. But for me, LMP2 is a great category. The only downside is, of course, you have to have the silver, which I think opens it up to a bit of gamesmanship. But I think LMP2 is a great class.
Of course, the team that you raced for was effectively Oak Racing, that was badged as Jackie Chan DC Racing. What was it like to work with those guys?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, our engineer on the 34 car was basically the lead engineer at Patron, so I'd known him from around the paddock, and really great group of guys. And Philippe Dumas, who manages, who was also full season with the Patron team, was really nice to work with, and I actually drove with him at Le Mans in 2013. But the guys are all great guys. It's an all-French team, and they've had a lot of great results at Le Mans, and to get to work with them and see definitely a different mentality of how to engineer the car and how to go racing is always interesting. Because whether it's Wayne Taylor Racing or Corvette or Cadillac or Penske or Oak now, you see nobody does it the same, and there's so many different ways to win and to succeed.
Jumping into the sort of early aspects of your career, like almost everybody racing competitively nowadays, you started out in karting. So you want to just go over a little bit of an overview of how your karting days started and how they overall progressed?
Well, I wouldn't say they progressed very much. Jordan and I both were awful in go-karts, and we didn't have any results at all. We started off, like, I guess it wasn't so much of a serious go at it. We were kind of doing it for fun. At the beginning, we shared a go-kart. We'd race once a month, and it was very low-key. When my dad was racing, just at the beginning of the Cadillac program the original Cadillac program was when we originally started racing. And then Cadillac program ended in 2003. And then he was able to kind of spend more time with us at the track, and we were kind of getting to the age where we needed to choose if this is what we wanted to do for real. And then we each got our own go-kart, started to take it more seriously, worked with Oz Negri was actually the importer for Kart Mini, which was the chassis we ran in Florida, and we raced all around the country. Still, like I said, didn't progress very much, and really never got any results. We did lots of racing, but never really amounted to anything. And at that time, the SunTrust program had just started with Daytona prototypes, and so we were able to kind of spend more time at the big track, and he was able to kind of coach us along in the go-karts as well. So at that phase, it was just learning and not a lot of winning.
Well, of course, from there you went to Skip Barber Championships, just sort of national Skip Barber leagues. How was that? A little bit more of a success story than the karting was?
Yeah, that was surprising because the first thing at Skip Barber, they used to have a karting scholarship shootout, and so it was for drivers that had done no more than, I think, 2 races in a car. So for all go-kart drivers, and the names that went through the shootout were it was like Gabby Chavez and Alexander Rossi and a bunch of guys were in my year. Joel Miller was there, and so my year Alexander Rossi won it, and I finished second. I was second in the shootout, which I was racing against karting guys that were killing me every weekend. So fortunately, I adapted the cars a little bit better. So the second place prize for that was a full season in the regional series of Skip Barber. And then I did the national series where I finished second to Joel in that one. But yeah, it was definitely more progress was made there.
One of the things we found interesting, we were talking to Dion Volmolka when he was talking about his karting, is how many of like the drivers you race against now and that we see in any series, he raced against a bunch of other guys. So is there anybody that you really raced against growing up in karting?
Alexander Sims came over and raced the Florida Winter Tour. There's a bunch of karting guys that went on, but in the Skip Barber year that I did, it was Joel Miller, me, Joseph Newgarden, Connor Daly, Gabby Chavez. There's just Stephen McAleer was in it. And there's just a huge group of really top level guys. And actually, Alexander Rossi was there for half the season. And it was a really good group of guys, and it was really fun because the environment in Skip Barber was, just one paddock of cars, and you picked cars, and so everyone was kind of together, and it was fun to kind of create a bond, and now to see where everybody's gone to. I mean, almost everybody has a full-time ride somewhere, and it's pretty cool to see where people go. And when Alexander Sims came to do the Florida Winter Tour, he'd been doing the World Series of Karting in Europe, and he was like on top of the world, and he was projected to be an F1 in like 3 years, and so he came over to racing go-karts, and he absolutely killed everybody. So it's kind of cool to see him now racing with Ray Hall and see where his career's gone as well.
What's funny is you're the third driver we've interviewed, and I think the name we've had come up all 3 times that drivers raced against growing up was Gabby Chavez, because I know Dion said he raced against him. Zach Veach said the same.
Well, Zach Veach, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
The new one, none of all those names was Rossi. I don't think we've talked to anyone that raced with Rossi growing up. That's a different one.
Yeah, because Rossi did. He did some racing over here. The first time I saw Rossi was at the Red Bull Scholarship in California. Remember when they had the Red Bull shootout thing that Scott Speed won and got to F1 and everything? So. And so I first met him over there. And then my only story with Rossi is I did my first Skip Barber National Series race in 2007. And drafting was huge because they had these stupid Hanford devices on the cars to make them draft better. And so in the draft you could gain like 10 miles an hour, and it was ridiculous because it just closed up every level of driver was just together in a big pack. So in qualifying, you'd have to bump draft and like try to get the right draft everywhere. And so it was at Virginia, and Rossi comes up to me and he's like, we should work together in qualifying, blah, blah, blah. And so I'd never bump drafted before in an open wheel car or in anything. And so not knowing, I just held my foot flat and ran right in the back of him and just destroyed the front of my car. But I don't know if he got a good lap or not, but that was the end of my qualifying session. But so yeah, that was my first. And then Rossi went from Skip Barber, and then I think he went over to do European stuff, and then he never came back until now.
Well, I know Rossi went to Formula BMW in 2008, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, so then he went to Europe. But after Skip Barber, you got your break in 2008, racing for your dad's team in a Pontiac Riley DP in the Grand Am Series. So,
that year was Penske's last Daytona 24-hour in 2008. No, they did it the next year as well, but that was the first year back.
Yeah, they were partnered with Wayne Taylor Racing with the 9 Toshiba car.
Coincidence.
Exactly. You know your stuff, for sure.
That's what Dion told him.
I get that a lot. It's scary.
He's here for a reason. What was that like, though, getting that big break to go race for your dad's team in Grand Am?
Yeah, so, I mean, me and Jordan are both really lucky, obviously, to have a dad that owns a team. And I think, he wouldn't put us in it if he didn't know we could do the job. He's got big partners to look after. And I didn't think I could do it. And I didn't. Looking back, I don't think I was ready. but he thought I was, and for sure he wanted to put me in either. I wasn't his son, and everybody knows that. So for sure, Jordan and I have gotten our breaks due to that. But getting thrown into the deep end, I think, is the best thing that could have happened. I did kind of a season here doing, F2000, Star Mazda, a year of kind of IMSA lights, things like that. And getting thrown into that, though, I learned way more than I would have doing 3 seasons of anything else. So that really helped me. And in that race, it was like almost all wet, which I'm sure you remember, obviously.
Yeah.
But I only drove in the dry. I only did like 3 stints in the whole race. So it was, they really made sure I didn't do anything stupid, which was good.
But hey, at least you didn't hit the pit wall like somebody did a year prior.
That's true. That's true. That did happen. It happens so many times, and I think it goes unnoticed sometimes how many people hit that pit wall. But,
I will say, 2008 you guys were actually running really strong until something happened in the night. I forgot who was in the car. I think it was Max, when the car just wouldn't launch out of the pit box, and they had to push it back a couple times.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what was happening.
I think it may have been the clutch, like all DPs back then had a problem with.
Yeah, it might have been clutch. I know that the Pontiacs were having to refill oil and water almost every stop, and I remember that was one of the reasons why Penske didn't win that year with the Pontiac Riley.
Well, and they had a flat tire on the first stint.
Yeah, that's true as well. And yeah, because that year was Pirelli, and
yeah,
they were blowing up a lot. So
it blows my mind that you remember this stuff, Kevin. Do you
I know.
remember exactly what stint the tire blew up? This was over 10 years ago.
well, also the joy of watching it back on YouTube during the off season.
That's true.
But I remember it live though. I remember that Lowe's Game Coast scheme that was amazing.
Do you remember the year that Max had to refill the car on the back straight at Daytona? That was maybe the year or two before that. He ran out of gas right around the bus stop, and the team drove a fuel jug on the pit cart to the bus stop, and he actually had to fill it up on the track.
Daytona's the one 24-hour race where you can do that, because that's a very big no-no at Le Mans.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, unless you're French.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Being French helps a lot.
Well, you didn't stay with your dad's team really past Daytona that season, because for Virginia you went to Bayer Racing, and they had a Ford. Didn't they have a Ford powered Dallara?
It was a Crawford.
Okay, I'm wrong. All right, I'm already way wrong.
Actually, but you're not far off. The Ford Dallara came in 2009.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after you did your one-off at VIR, which, by the way, VIR needs to come back as a prototype track. I think prototypes would work excellent there, as they did in the later years of ALMS. Well, you went
about trash coming back too. We also talked about Barber, and Barber does.
Yeah, I like that too with him. So, but you went to Doran Racing in the middle of the season. You didn't quite finish out the season with them, but you did go to Doran Racing for the end of the 2008 season.
Yep. Yeah. So that was like the Bayer thing was really good. And then, yeah, that was the Ford Dallara with Bert Frizzell, which was, again, a really good learning experience to get to drive with someone with a lot of prototype experience. And racing against Bert was actually, I always thought Bert was really underrated in prototypes, and I learned a lot racing against him, like in traffic and things, and how he could, he was the hardest guy to pass. And normally, when you get into traffic, it's a good opportunity to make a pass. But when you caught Bert, it was like he used the traffic really well to hold you behind, and I learned a lot from him with that. And then, which really gives you a lot of confidence in our style of racing. And because normally when you catch traffic, you're dreading it, but with his mentality, it's encouraging. Anyway, the season was pretty good. We had a pretty good race at Montreal. It was wet, and anyway, no real results that year, but still a good learning year, I'd say.
Yeah, and you went back to Bayer in 2009 and actually raced alongside your brother Jordan for some of the rounds. You were a full-time driver. He wasn't full-time that year. So what was that like very early on? Did you have that sibling rivalry from the beginning, or were you both just committed to trying to find just optimal pace and a good learning experience?
Yeah, I mean, we weren't racing against each other. We were both really young at the time, and we both tried to make the best of it. Obviously, he was close to getting his GM deal at the time when he went to drive for Auto Haas. But we both really had a lot to prove because we hadn't done anything yet, and so we were both trying to learn and get some results. And we were having a really good race. Daytona wasn't terrible. We had some issues and ended up not finishing, but then Watkins Glen we were having a great race, and the team owner was doing the dead man on the fuel, and we were doing so well. We're in the top 3 or whatever, and we come in for the pit stop, and we come in, we leave. It was a timed fill, I think, and there was no fuel in the car, and he was so busy like filming our pit stop. He was so excited that he never opened the dead man, and so we had to come back in, and that was pretty much the end of that one. But then we had a couple more good races. We had a good race again in Montreal, where we went kind of off strategy and finished 4th. But I think that was our best result of the year. And we had a couple decent races, but ultimately struggled for pace and chalk it up to another learning year, unfortunately.
And I want to throw some context in there. You bring up, you and Jordan racing against each other and together. That was a big deal back then. Like, that's one of the selling points that Grand Am used back then to actually promote the series. 2 younger brothers with a sports car legend, or 2 younger brothers, the children of a sports car legend, now coming up through the ranks and racing against each other.
Yeah, I mean, at the time we were both very young and unproven, so it put a lot of pressure on us to get the job done, and we weren't getting the job done. So at the time it was pretty stressful, because although our dad is in racing and ultimately could put us in his car, it wouldn't work if he just put us in the car just to put us in his car, and he had SunTrust and GM backing and all this stuff, and if he's
playing favorites, it's not going to end well.
Yeah, if he's being seen to be doing favorites for his kids and it's just a hobby, then all that's going to crumble as well. So for us, it was a lot of pressure, because racing is all we know, obviously, and so we had to somehow find a way to make a living out of it. And so that was a stressful year because, again, we didn't do anything, and the series was using it and whatever, but it makes it obviously makes it a better selling point if one of us is winning at least. And so at the time in our careers, it was probably more stress than fun.
And I remember Jordan for a year or so dropped down to GT and raced in one of the Mazdas when Mazda was fantastic in the GT class.
Yeah, I mean, and that year, surprisingly, is probably the most critical year in Jordan's career. And so he was driving for John Meraki, which Racer's Edge, and like that year, he did such a good job because it was a really small team, and they were racing in Speed Source, which was at the time, like you said, dominating. And he outqualified Bomarito on a number of occasions, and they raced really well. And that was the year that he got recognized by GM, and that kind of led into his being hired as a factory driver the following year. So, I mean, although he wasn't contending for a championship, he fought for some wins and led a lot of races. And although it looked like a step back from prototypes, it was actually the best move of his entire career.
And I mean, the Mazdas back then, they either broke or they won. They were that strong.
Yeah, I mean, in Daytona, I think one of the Speed Source cars broke a fuel cell. They replaced the
2009.
fuel cell and still won the race. It was crazy.
On the topic of 2010, though, you actually went back full time to Wayne Taylor Racing, and you were driving alongside Max Angelelli, and that was a partnership that pretty much lasted, what was it, 3 seasons, right?
No,
10, 11, 12. Yes, 3 seasons.
And yeah, because you went to Spirit of Daytona in 2013. But before I get to that, you picked up your first win in Grand Am in 2010 at Lime Rock, home track, by the way. Just want to point that out. And 2011 is actually where you really saw a breakout season. That's where you got quite a bit of success. So you want to just talk about those seasons?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example of, when you join a good team, the team really can make you look good and highlight your good aspects. And so it was nice to get to join the big team. Obviously, again, it was a lot of pressure, and that year I got a lot of anti support, I'd say, from a lot of people that didn't think I deserved it. And I don't know if I had shown the performance yet, but it was another chance again to, if I was going to show some results, you have to. I mean, it's hard to beat Ganassi and Gainesco and Wayne Taylor Racing and those big teams at the time, and if you're in a small team. So getting to be in some good equipment was really good for my confidence, and had some really good races. And pole at Barber or Daytona, I think, was my first pole for the sprint race, and then maybe Barber and Daytona and Lime Rock. But it was a really good year, and getting to work with a big team and a really smart engineer, and alongside Max, who mentored me and Jordan, still does. So really good to get to drive with him.
If there's ever a time where I don't wish I was driving a car, it would have been during the 2010 Rolex 24 during the rain.
Oh, yeah. It's not fun. Oh, I mean, 2017 wasn't great either.
Yeah. Well, okay, I will admit, and this is the one time I'll ever admit this, I fell asleep one time. That was during that giant caution for the fog.
Oh, that was 2010?
No, that was 2017.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
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 Well, there was almost always a 2-hour-long caution back in those days for fog.
Yeah. Yeah, the fog always came in like early hours of the morning. But the good things about the cars now when it rains is the radiators on the sides, and back with the DPs, the radiators right in the front. So it was much harder to keep the windshield from fogging. And so that was a nightmare in the rain when the windshield would fog, and you've got the windshield heater and everything, and everything. But now it's so much easier to see, and back then it was. Now that you mention it, was miserable back then to drive in the rain, because when there'd be those long cautions, you wouldn't get enough airflow. It'd start fogging, and it was bad. I remember there used to be lots of the stick with the rag on it moves.
Yeah.
I want to quickly jump off of sports cars here, because quite an interesting thing you'd raced in at the end of 2012 was the Gold Coast 600, and that was a little interesting for you, to say the least. You want to tell all the people listening exactly what happened during the start of one of those races?
Yeah. I still hear about that one. So back then they used to do this thing with international drivers. They used to have an incentive for the teams to hire drivers from around the world, from different forms of racing, and everything was paid. Drivers got to go. It was a really cool deal. And then you go, you drive the car, you do a test, and so I was driving with Greg Ritter for Gary Rogers, and we didn't qualify very well, and so started the race. Actually, Max Pappas was starting right behind me, and he comes up to me and he's like, man, let's just take it easy. We're on the back here. And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, of course not. I don't crash on the starts, blah, blah, blah. And so in my head, I'm like, I need to move up some because we shouldn't be back here. And so we start the race. It was a standing start at the time. And I think it was actually Hinchcliffe, who was my teammate, stalled at the start, and this big pile-up started, and people were going around it, and I'd actually had a decent start, and I pulled out from behind someone, and then I just saw a stopped car, and I hit it and barrel rolled down the front straight. I think I made it to the start-finish line, but not much further, and I ended up on my roof. It was a big mess, and that was the extent of my V8 Supercar experience. And funny enough, at that time, Talladega Nights had just come out, and so my team was calling me Ricky Bobby, and Simon Pagenaud was there with another team, and so he was John Girard, like before any of this happened. And funny enough, it was me that hit him. It was Ricky Bobby that hit John Girard, and then Ricky Bobby was flying through the air, and the stories were endless, but yeah, that was it.
Would you ever consider going back to V8 supercars? Would you have Bathurst as a race you want to hit on your resume?
Yeah, that would be unbelievable. But I think before I could even tackle that, I'd love to do the GT race there, because I think it's such a hard track to learn, and I would definitely need laps on the track and in the cars before I could give it a serious go. But Jordan's probably closer to getting a deal over there. Obviously, he's a GM driver, so they've got Holden over there for him, and he actually tested a 888 car earlier in the year. So for him, and he actually did a really good job on it too. So if they ever have any rookie tests or anything, which testing is very limited, he's on their radar. So I hope he can get a shot, because I think he would do a really good job there.
Moving on to 2013, back into the Rolex Sports Car Series. Another quite interesting thing happened. You went from Wayne Taylor Racing to Spirit of Daytona. So you want to explain the whole behind-the-scenes decisions on that one?
Yeah, so that was another one where, we had a good year in 2012, and 2011 was really good. 2012 was okay. 12 was a disaster at Wayne Taylor Racing. We had a really rough year. And Spirit of Daytona was really strong, and they had a really switched-on engineer. And then, so I made the move to go there, and Jordan was ready to slot into my spot at Wayne Taylor Racing, so it was kind of like both of us would have a good place to be. And then right as we made the move, I made the move to Spirit of Daytona, the engineer left, and I was really excited to get to drive with Richard, and the season was just a real struggle, and we couldn't really find the pace, and Richard and I worked really well together, and we have a good relationship now still, but it was just a really tough year, and we had one podium all year, and it was just not a great year. So the following year, Max retired from full-time driving, and I went back to drive with Jordan.
Yeah, also in 2013, you made your first appearance at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in the GTM class. Also, pretty much your first appearance in a GTE car, driving the C6R Corvette. Yeah,
so that was good. Like I said, that was Philippe Dumas, who's at Onroque now, was driving in the other car with Cooper McNeil, and I was driving with Patrick Bornhauser,
and Julian Canal.
Yeah. And that was really good. I mean, they'd won it either the year before or 2 years before, and
I think both.
That year was a very miserable rain race.
Oh,
and
God.
I don't exactly remember what happened, but we were not competitive at all. And
it comes full circle, because that race was exactly 5 years ago today.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Honestly, it was my least favorite Le Mans because of one fact.
Alan Simonson.
Yeah.
That was I'll never forget that either, because he was in our class, but he was so fast. He was racing with the pro cars.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
He was so fast, and what's amazing now is I think it was either that year or the year before, he was the first guy to go under 4 minutes at Le Mans in a GT car, in a GTE car, let's say. And now they're doing 40. What are they doing? 47s.
47s this year from the Porsche in qualifying.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But in 5 years, they've picked up 13 seconds.
Well, he still finished in fifth place in 2013 in class, so although the race probably didn't go as perfectly as you would have hoped, it's still not a bad performance for the first time out.
It was a lot of fun, and it was a fully French experience, and uh, it was really good. I mean, anytime any driver can get a chance to go to Le Mans, um, I mean, you have to take it because you never know. You don't get any laps there in practice, so you go for the test day and leading up to the race, you might only get 15 laps, and it's such a difficult track that you have to do the race in order to really learn the track and the way the race works. And now with the slow zones, there's a lot to learn, and so I'm really lucky that I've had a chance to do it quite a few times now.
I was gonna say, 2013 was the year I think that the other Larbra car had a miserable race. Where they were breaking down like every hour.
Yeah, that's possible. I don't remember what happened to them.
They were like the last classified car.
Oh, yeah. I think that car was thrown together very last minute because it wasn't really a full-time car because it was all.
It's the Cooper
driver.
McNeil special because something always goes wrong with the car that he's in.
That's,
Either a driver gets sick or something. The car crashes. They change classes. Something.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that because he did it with him and Jerome that one year. Huh.
Yeah, the Cooper McNeil special.
Yeah. Okay. Remind me not to team with him at Le Mans.
Jumping back to the state side of racing, though, you went back to your father's team, like you said, in 2014. This was the first year of the merger between the American Le Mans Series and Grand Am, so obviously you had, I don't want to say you had larger car counts, because I actually think it was around the same, if not even smaller, than 2013 from the Grand Am side of things.
But now you have two GT classes, and then you have that PC class nobody cares about.
Oh, all right.
Oh, don't do PC dirty like that, Kevin.
Well, that was something that was so great about Grand Am was only two classes, other than the GX year.
We don't remember that.
Yeah, you hardly saw them. But like having two classes, I thought was great. It was super simple, and that nobody was worried about pro-ams, and Emil Asentado was still winning races with Jeff Siegel. And anyway, I won't ramble on with that, but I like the two classes thing.
2014, you had two completely different types of prototypes stitched together in one class.
Yeah, I mean that was such a shame because everybody was excited for the merger, but it's such a shame that we couldn't just like convert cars immediately because nobody really liked the balancing, and it was never fun to race against the P2, and I'm sure they hated racing against us. And
I mean, think about this. You have cars that are built for Le Mans versus tubular frame cars that have only had a bodywork change since 2004.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like a 600-pound difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was necessary, and had to be a time to do it. So I'm glad it happened because now it's all paying off because it's beautiful now.
And then you had the Corvettes versus the Porsches versus everybody pretty much, and GTLM.
The Viper.
Yeah, the Viper.
Yeah, the Viper.
Yeah. You know, then you got Tommy Kendall up in the booth trying not to be biased.
Yeah.
But I mean, could you tell that there was like a driving standard difference in the top prototype class since most of the factory back drivers were now in GTLM?
Yeah, I think there was some there's some up and down. It was mainly I think there was a lot of frustration from the P2 drivers, and it was more just the interaction of the different types of cars, because at some times, depending on the weekend, the P2 was so much stronger than us, but we only had top speed, and so like I think they'd get so frustrated that the racing standards would just plummet because they would do anything to hold us back, and it just I don't know, it ended up being a little bit dirty, I think.
Oh, and then you also have to throw in the Gustavo Jacobin factor.
I wasn't gonna name that name, but yeah, the factor was there. It was there.
Well, you guys did come up second place in the championship, only to Action Express, which was, that's a common trend that you're gonna find, except for last year. We'll get to that in a little bit here. But 2015 rolled around. Another decent, fair season again in the Corvette DP, still racing for Wayne Taylor with Jordan. Came in 5th that season. Any particular reason why you guys kind of just didn't have
Pretty much
as
it
much
was the
pace
same
that
way
year?
all the way until
15.
pretty much the same way all the way until 17.
Yeah, pretty much. You guys had the same result year after year, and like also finishing second at the Rolex 24 consistently.
Yeah, that was
They-
the worst thing.
Oh,
Jeez.
But
15 was
it
the year
made
at
the
the...
win so much sweeter.
Actually, 15 was the year.
That was the year that you had the drive time infraction, correct?
Yeah.
Yep,
finished
because
16th.
Yes.
Jordan was trying to hunt down Scott Dixon.
0 points. Yeah, that was last place points.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which could
because
have
actually,
contributed to 5th in the points.
yeah, and it's always terrible to have a bad result at Daytona because there's so many cars there.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
always.
from
But we were
2014 to 17.
We're lucky that they gave us last place points and not 0 points because they're supposed to give us 0. So we were a little bit lucky there.
Well, 2015, no, it was my bad. 2016, again, another fair season. Came third that season. Action Express won the championship again. Really, Action Express seemed to be the dominant team in the end of the DP era. But then 2017 is where we really saw a big change. I think if there's one year I could call your breakout year, it's this one. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but it really looks like the new DPI or just whole new prototype formula of cars really suits your driving style more than the DPs would.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would put it a lot down to our team and the off-season preparation. I mean, we were testing the car so early, and the relationship we had with Dallara was so strong, and Action Express honestly didn't really embrace the Dallara partnership very well, and so they were trying to do everything on their own, and I really applaud our team for listening and learning because it's a very different style of car, and so we hit the ground running really, really early, and so for qualifying, obviously we had lots of poles, and Jordan and I were used to working together, and so we knew kind of, okay, qualifying comes around, this is what we do for qualifying, this is what we're going to have to do for the race, and they could really tailor make the car for each of us, no pun intended, but like, and it just really seemed to help our results, greatly. The first 5 races were easy, to be honest, other than Daytona.
I want to put some context onto the how Action Express really wasn't bonding that well with the Dallara partnership, because previously, and not many people know this, but the Corvette DP, it was just the bodywork. You could choose whatever chassis you wanted, and they used Coyote chassis, which they had been using for many years prior. And you guys were using the Dallara chassis, which you guys had been using for many years prior as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
time to switch.
yeah, I mean, there was nothing in common with the DPs that we would have translated over from the Corvettes. But their engineering style, they like to run the car high and soft and lots of rake, and Ian Watt is really a genius on the dampers, and so that car really suited their style. And when you go over to a proper prototype, the style is very different. It's all about controlling the platform and the aero and where the car is dynamically and all this stuff, and it's much more, I'd say, sensitive and technical, where I think being able to lean on Dallara, they've got experience in everything, in LMP1 and GP2, GP3, World Series by Renault. Every high downforce car, Dallara, IndyCar, they have experience everywhere. So we were able to gather all of that knowledge and really use it, where I think they were a little nervous that if they were working too closely with Dallara, we were going to get their information. And anyway, I think this year they've caught on to it, and they actually have a Dallara engineer embedded in their team now. So I think that's been helping them.
Either that, or it's kind of scary the fact that they ran away with Rolex 24 like they did.
This year?
Yeah.
Well, I think we would have beaten them. I think
one for mechanical issues and one problem on toilet.
Yeah. I mean, they were limping home. They were 10 seconds off the pace at the end of the race, and I think if anybody had a completely clean race, they would have beaten them. To be honest, I think the 10 car had massive issues, and Patron cars crashed.
Well, the 10 car they pulled out of the race because of the tires.
Yeah, that, and it was never really explained, which is kind of scary. But yeah.
I mean, definitely the Rolex 24 was definitely down to Action Express versus Acura for the most part. And then Acura had their niggly little issues, which was kind of expected, honestly, because it was such a new car.
Yeah, and I'm surprised it ran as flawlessly as it did. I mean, we did lots of. I've never done so much testing as what we did in this off season. I think we did like 14 or 15 days of testing, and there's a 30-hour endurance test in there, and there was
Team Penske.
Yeah, it was. I've never seen money just going like it was, and so.
And not to mention, I mean, your confidence level has to be boosted by the fact that the base car is the Orca, and how such of a dominant car it has been in the new generation of LMP2 cars. Yeah,
and it's been interesting to see why it's successful in Europe, and like why it's good at certain places, and there's definitely I don't think people understand how good the Dallara is actually, and the good thing about the Dallara is it's extremely adjustable. So for our tracks here in America, in Europe, the racing on every track is the same. They're all smooth, they're all fast, they're all flowy. But when you come here, you need a car that's adjustable, because you go to Daytona, where you have extremely high loads on the tire, high banks, very high speeds, and you go to Sebring, where it's bumpy as hell and just crazy, and then you go Long Beach street course, you go back to Watkins Glen, which is a European style track, and so the Cadillac for those situations and being able to adjust is really positive. But like you said, the Orca in Europe is a dominant car, and you could see what JDC did with it last year, and we know from when Penske got the car in the generic form how strong they ran with it, and so we had a lot of high hopes for this year, and like you said, it was a big confidence builder as well. So and whatever Penske gets, they're gonna make it their own and kind of adapt in a good way.
And I mean, the last time they ran a sports car was, well, at least in the top level prototype in America, was their DP car that they ran in 2009.
Yeah.
The Crown Royal car. Well, Verizon later in the season, but
yeah,
a car that was backed by Porsche factory drivers, so he doesn't go in shallow.
Well, yeah, actually, I don't know how many people have heard of this, but I actually read on this once in Racer, so I'm going to take its word for it. Porsche, I believe, was planning an LMP1 program in the American Le Mans Series in 2010, and that's why they stuck with Penske and Grand Am in 2009, because they wanted to extend that partnership. And then the Porsche LMP1 never came until 2014. So,
wow. I mean, they did have a good build-up with the Spider program.
Yeah,
Wow, interesting.
And I mean, let's put it like this, though. If the Porsche DP car did not have a crank sensor failure in like hour 17 or 18 at the Rolex, and
they're going to kill us.
They would have won.
Oh, they would have lapped everybody.
Oh, yeah, because they were there fighting with the Brumos, which was the pole sitter, the Ganassi car that didn't crash every hour.
Yeah.
And the Wayne Taylor car.
Yeah. They were crazy strong that year.
2018, you're racing for Acura Team Penske. There's going to be a question on that in a few minutes here. Right now you're third in points. You won Mid-Ohio, obviously, just about a month ago.
I got to experience that.
Yep, got to experience that in
the
person
team
alongside
won.
Kyle.
I call it the luck of the sombrero, but
Yeah,
actually-
well, we signed about every car in the paddock.
The cars?
Yeah,
They
we
signed some
Magnus's
tires.
car.
the tires in silver, and then they took pictures of the cars during the race, and you can see the
You
silver.
can see it. Yeah.
Nice.
Actually, the two Action Express cars are tied right now at the top of the championship. And you guys are in third place right now, only 14 points back. So we're only pretty much halfway through the season right now, and you have Watkins Glen coming up, which is obviously a race for the TP and AEC. So definitely a championship contender this year. And I mean, I guess that's pretty much expected when you have a massive team like Team Penske coming in. Obviously, this season has been treating you pretty well so far.
Yeah, I think after Sebring, we didn't think we would get back into it. But, I mean, that's kind of a good thing about the growing fields is that if you have a bad race, there's still a lot of opportunity to create gaps from other people. And the quality is so high that you can really keep the pressure on. And after Daytona, we had little issues, and then Sebring had the 2 engine failures, and then not a great race in Long Beach. But we showed a lot of pace in all of those events. And so just clawing our way back from Mid-Ohio and then Detroit having a solid event, a solid result. I don't think there's any reason why we can't be, in the hunts and keep kind of gaining ground in the next couple of races and keep the pressure on, because I think the cars have been plenty fast, and now it seems that we've got the reliability sorted out, and the guys have lots of tools of what we need to do to keep the cars running well and strong and competitive. So I think it should be a good second half of the year.
All right, so I got a question. At Le Mans, you became the first driver to drive a variant of all the new LMP2 cars.
Yes.
Which one's the best and which one's the worst?
Well, do you want me to drop the Multimatic out of there?
I already know
Okay.
the worst.
Okay, I'll keep going. I think the Cadillac or the Dallara, for me, was the best. I think just because of how you have to be in America and how adjustable the car has to be, it kind of gave you everything you needed, and you could really adjust for each track, and that's why it's so good everywhere. And I think the car itself is a very confidence-building car to drive. You can slide it around, and it doesn't punish you. You can, if you make a little mistake, you lose maybe a tenth, not half a second. But with the Ligier, if you make a mistake, you lose a second, and you have to completely give up the corner. So I think, in that respect, the Cadillac was my favorite, and the Multimatic is probably just because of the competitiveness. I mean, the feeling wasn't bad, but the speed wasn't there.
The poor Riley. Of course, it's not surprising that car isn't that great, because Riley, for years, they just focused on the DP cars. They didn't build a global spec car.
Yeah, it's such a different type of car. Like you said, they were the best at building, tube frame cars, and nobody could touch them. Dallara came in, and Coyote had their car, and I think no matter, even if you were to build a new series today with redo the DP series, everybody would go with Riley again, because even if the bodywork isn't the prettiest or it's not the most efficient car, mechanically they know how to build. I don't know how they do it, but mechanically their cars are the best. And with the new P2 cars, it doesn't seem to apply quite the same way. And I think Mazda has completely redone that car.
Well, Yost Racing.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yost Racing. Yeah. They've replaced some very serious components of that car.
Well, you go from working on Audi R18s to a Mazda Riley DPI,
Yeah, it's very different. for sure.
But I mean, Mazda, they were actually making pretty good gains at the end of their Lola days. So
Yeah, I mean, I think they should have won a lot of races on that. What was that? 16. They should have
Yeah.
won. They should have won 5 races, and that just came down to execution, I think. And
they probably should have won Sebring this year.
Yeah, they were super strong, and then they had the pit lane
Pit stop issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it'll come. I think it'll be good for the series if they can get some results. And they definitely had speed and had put it together a couple times. So I think they're ready for a win.
Driving the different P2 cars, you've driven the Riley, you've driven the Ligier, and the Lara, and now the Acura. Do you think that is definitely like a benefit, knowing what your competitors are driving, where maybe they don't?
Yeah, I think. I mean, for my own confidence, it's nice to know. But at the end of the day, I think if you give a good team any of I'd say the top 3 cars, I think they're going to achieve the same results. At least I know for sure with the Orca and the Dallara. You give either of those constructors to Penske, and the results are going to be the same. But for your own confidence, it's nice to know that you know what that car has and what that car can do, and because drivers are very insecure people, so you want to know that when we go to Watkins Glen, are they going to be maxed down for us, or can they trim out a little bit? And I know maybe we can trim out a little bit, and so it's nice to know some of those things and have the inside scoop a little bit about what each team is dealing with.
I want to end out this episode here just with the couple of questions that we got from social media. So I'll let Kyle handle the Instagram side of questions.
I have 3 from Instagram.
I'll wrap it up with the 2 from. Well, actually, I think that some of them are multi-part. Yeah, there's 3 total from Reddit. So, and then that'll just be a complete wrap up of the episode. So, Kyle, if you want to start with the questions from Instagram.
So our friend Brody asks, does driving for a team as prestigious as Team Penske come with any added stress or pressure?
Oh yeah, it definitely does. I mean, I've never driven for such a big organization, and you have so many people behind the program. It's a huge. Acura is supporting it in a huge way, and so lots of eyes. And when you're driving in a good team, I think a common misconception is that the pressure's taken off because you're in good equipment, but that's actually when the pressure's on, because everything they do, they expect to win. I mean, they win in V8 Supercars and NASCAR, IndyCar, and now, like, for the first half, almost 4 races, we were without a result at all, and so the pressure was on. But the greatest thing about the team is the confidence they give you, and they really make you feel at home, where other teams I've driven for really make you feel like you have to prove yourself. When you go to Penske, they make you feel like you deserve to be there, and everybody's working as a team, as one kind of unit, and all the drivers work together to help each other and push each other to go faster. So on one side, I'd say it's a lot of pressure, but once you're winning races, it's the most amazing environment to be in, for sure.
And then Austin asks, what do you like better, racing with or against your brother?
I preferred racing with him. I think that was the hardest decision ever to leave the team and leave racing with Jordan, but it was something I couldn't say no to. But yeah, that was the best year of our lives, I'm sure. We'll never have a year like that again. And getting to share those memories of those first 5 races and the championship together is, and also with our dad, was, an unbelievable experience and something, we'll never forget. But racing against him is good. I mean, we're both secure. Like I said earlier in the show, when we were not proven yet, it was very stressful and maybe not the most fun time of racing in our lives. And now we have a championship. He has 2, and we're both kind of secure in our positions, and so now we have more fun, and we had a great fight in Long Beach, and I'm cheering for him to win races if we can't win races. So we still have an awesome experience, and actually he's coming over for dinner in about 15 minutes. So we still have a great relationship, and I miss driving with him, to be honest.
Okay, I actually got a quick little add-on to that. What was it like racing with your dad and your brother in 2014?
That was cool. I mean, my dad had been out of the car for a long time, so he was just doing it. And we really had to pressure him to do it as well. He didn't want to do it at all because he didn't want to make a mistake, or he didn't feel comfortable in the car. And he doesn't like to do things when he's not comfortable with it, or he doesn't believe in doing something just to do it. So he wanted to contribute, and that was the coolest thing. And especially to be on the podium all together was awesome. With Max, who's who's also family with us, and I mean, that was another great experience. But every race weekend last year, and obviously at Wayne Taylor Racing, it was like driving together because we're all really super close, and he's always giving input and pushing us to go faster and blah blah blah. But yeah, that was a cool experience because I'd never done it before.
And the last question from Victor Valley: what's been the most difficult thing to get used to this year with Penske?
Funny enough, it's the hardest thing to get used to is actually how many things you can ask for. I think as a driver, you want to be low maintenance, and you want to just get in the car and do the job, and leave the track and not bother anybody. But there's no Penske magic, I'd say. Like, everybody thinks that you get in the Penske car and the car is just fast. But that's not the way it really works. It's more, they have all the tools, and you have to tell them what you need to perform, and they can make it happen. And so kind of understanding what you need to succeed, and what you need to get the results. And obviously they have tons of experience with that stuff as well, but personally as a driver, they need to learn what you need and what you like, and you can ask for so many things, and they can really make it happen. So I'd say that's been the hardest thing to get used to, and it requires a lot of introspective, I guess, looking at yourself and your driving style. And it's been really cool to get to share the car with Elio and Graham, or Juan and Dane and Simon, and everybody shares so much data that you learn a lot about yourself. And that kind of leads to more information about what you need to help yourself.
All right, just a couple questions from the Reddit side of things here. Cookie Monster FL wants to know if you still have the old IndyCar monocoque from a Ganassi team that he saw in some random Snapchats from you a couple years ago. I actually want to know
Jordan's?
the story behind this.
Yeah, so my dad and Max manage Ryan Briscoe. And so Briscoe was driving for Ganassi from, I don't remember, 2003, 4, 5 area. And I think it was a 2003 Richmond car that had touched the wall or something, and it punched a hole in the tub. And at the time, we were racing against Ganassi in prototypes, or Wayne Taylor Racing was racing Ganassi in prototypes 2004. And Ryan was there racing full-time in IndyCar, and they'd offered it somehow. And there's a long story with Spencer Pompelli and Brian Sellers or something, that they had gotten this tub somehow. But anyway, the team had patched up the tub and repainted all beautifully. It was never to be a race car again, but they just prepped it like it was. And somehow Brian Sellers had it in the back of his truck or something, and had to give it back. And anyway, it made its way to our house, and we set it up and put it a steering wheel and pedals into it, and tried to make a little driving simulator out of it.
Jamie Howe said he couldn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And ARX Jim wants to know if you could participate in any other form of motorsports, what would it be? And I feel like you racing for Team Penske right now is a little bit of an elephant in the room, but I'm going to let you take that.
I think I asked you at that Mid-Ohio thing if the Indy 500 was ever on your mind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, IndyCar is an amazing series, and I would love to be a part of it. I think it's one of the top series in the world right now. It always has, but right now it seems to be especially competitive. But right now I'm honestly completely focused on this and sports car racing, and I think I'd love to win Le Mans. And I think there's still a lot of work to be done here. If Penske tells me, Ricky, you drive the IndyCar now, then I say yes, sir. Otherwise, I drive for Penske, and I do what they tell me, and I'm really happy here in sports cars. And I think there's, the series is obviously growing, and everybody wants to be here after racing in Le Mans this year and talking to all the European drivers. As much as everybody talks about going there, they all talk about racing here. So that makes me feel really lucky to be racing in IMSA.
Come on, Rebellion. Come on back.
Yeah.
Which, to add on to that, you did do that test at Homestead in Pagano's car. So if you can, what was that car like?
Yeah, that was so much fun. I mean, it was Homestead, which isn't the greatest track, but they had the car in full street course trim with all the downforce, and it was a blast. I mean, I hate Homestead as a racetrack, and I still had the most fun ever. And it was a blast. I got the whole day by myself, and like 4 sets of tires. It was so much fun.
How did that come together?
So last year IndyCar was having lots of brake issues because they had Brembo brakes, and they needed rookies.
They went to PFC. Yeah.
Yeah, so they ended up going to PFC, and so they needed, it was a lot of check boxes to check. And so I checked the rookie box because I'd never driven an IndyCar.
So you were the guinea pig.
Yeah. I tested and I had lots of carbon brake experience. And so basically they wanted me to back lots of sets of brakes and kind of say these are good, these are bad, these are inconsistent, blah, blah, blah. These are pulling, these are doing this, these are cooling down too much, all these different things, and basically to see my feedback. And they told me it wasn't a driver test, so I tried to just do the best job I could, and who knows if that had anything to do with my current situation or not, but I tried to just do the best job I could and focus on feedback and doing the job that they asked me to do. So that was it. But other than that, I left the test like on the in lap of the last run, just thinking how lucky I was to get to drive a Penske IndyCar. And I really thought that was the last time I'd ever drive something for Penske. And it was I still remember that in lap, like it's kind of a moment in my life, but it was really cool.
And the very last question here, also from ARX Jim. This is a tiny bit of deep thought question, but he asked if you could design any track, what would it consist of?
Oh, okay. It would have no track limits. It would be completely lined by grass and gravel. I don't know if anybody's watched practice from Paul Ricard, but it looks ridiculous.
Oh yeah. It gives me a headache.
Yeah, and like doing half a season of WEC where all the tracks are the same and it's just track limits here. You got to drive through all this. That's a nightmare. And
you get to listen to Eduardo Freitas' voice.
Yeah,
that man needs to come to him. So I love his voice.
It's what you imagine. His control, though. You don't imagine any animation, and you definitely don't get any with him.
Yeah, earlier in the episode, you really put it into perspective that I thought about all European tracks. They kind of do all feel the same, and then you come to America and you get your Road America and your Mid Ohio and Long Beach and all these totally different tracks, and they're not all totally smooth. They don't have tons and tons of runoff. They all have character. It really does put into perspective how great a racetracks we truly have.
Yeah, it's awesome. We are so lucky, and like Mid Ohio, you guys were all there. That's one of the greatest tracks in America,
I just got done racing there in my go-kart last weekend.
In a go-kart?
Yes, that was the greatest. You and Jordan, you guys do all your go-karts and driveways and stuff. You need to come out to a road racing race where we do go-karts at like 100+ miles per hour at Mid-Ohio.
That's crazy. That is nuts.
You know what? I'm going to go build a go-kart track in my backyard now.
We were doing it in a go-kart, and that bump out of the carousel, yeah, you can really feel it in a go-kart.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I bet. I mean, in a car you feel it a lot, but in a
You
go-kart
can
it's gotta be.
see it when you guys go over. You guys hop.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got suspension, not just bendy bars. But
Oh yeah, and
that's
Baxter
cool.
brake.
Bill Riley actually used to be really big into supercarts, and he used to design and build his own carts, and
Yeah,
used to race. That's crazy stuff.
Chris, I think that'll do it then.
Yeah, I think that's a
after
nice
all that-
bombshell to end it all on.
After all that rambling about IndyCar, I think sometime we need to have Ricky back for a
Well,
normal
because
episode.
I feel like
Get
if we continue this thing any longer, then Jordan's gonna jump in the house and crash
We're gonna
this
get
thing.
Rodney
So.
Well,
Sandstorm, yeah.
wait. Is it going to be Jordan or Rodney? That's the question.
It's both.
Rodney doesn't visit me very often. He's kind of off on his own. But Jordan and Fonzie are coming over.
Oh yeah, one last thing then.
Oh no.
Are you a good uncle to the Fonz?
I'm a great uncle. I love him. He's a good boy, and yeah, we have some fun. But Jordan doesn't like when he spends time at my house. He doesn't like when he spends any time at anybody else's house other than his, because he gets fat really fast. And Jordan keeps a very close eye on his weight.
You don't have any doggos of your own though?
No, I want a doggo so bad, or a puppy.
Would you do the whole Instagram thing like a Norman and everybody?
Well, it's funny because Jordan didn't make the Fonzie account, and it's a kid that lives in Road America. And one year we didn't know who was posting these pictures, like screenshots of Jordan's post of Fonzie. And so we go to Road America, and this kid comes up and he's like, "I'm Fonzie," and Jordan's like, "Who's this crazy kid?" And he goes like, "No, I'm Fonzie 10 Taylor on Instagram." And so Jordan will send him pictures every now and then, and he's good at the captions and the posts and stuff. So
That's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Rain Race Podcast. If you enjoyed this one, you can click a card at the top right on YouTube and check out the rest of them, because we put effort into these sometimes. Thanks so much to Ricky for joining. We wish him the best of luck for the rest of the season. Although myself, I'm personally a Mazda fan. I won't be complaining if I see him win at Watkins Glen next week. And yeah, any final words from any of you?
I'll complain if Helio wins, but not if Ricky.
Still Elio. But hopefully we can have Ricky on again sometime in the future. We can do like a normal episode where we get the race fan Ricky Taylor to talk with us, talk about some IndyCar and sports cars like we do.
Cool. I'd love to. Sounds good.
Anyway, thank you so much for giving this episode a listen, and we'll catch you in the next one.